The fellow was on This Is Your Life, and he was one of these very rich fellows. He owned loads of property and houses and cafes. He had more money than Bernard Manning. He was very wealthy man, but his claim to fame was that he'd started 20 years previous with nothing. He was stony broke and he was a self-made man, so they got him on This Is Your Life. And Eamon Andrews got the book out there, and he said 20 years ago, he said, I'm correct in saying, he said, you had nothing. And the fellow said, that's right. He said, not a penny. He said, you had no money in the world. He said, and you went down the gents' conveniences in Piccadilly in London, and you were fortunate somebody had left one of the doors open. He said, he said, you went in and you found a penny on the floor. He said, and you got that penny and you came out and you put it in a slot machine in an amusement arcade and you won a shilling 20 years ago. And you got that shilling and you put it on the horses. And all the horses won and you got £300. And you got that £300 and you were in a pub and a complete stranger came up to you and told you how to invest that £300 and it made you £50,000. You got your first business, you've never looked back. He said, we've got somebody here now. So he says, don't tell me you found the fella who 20 years ago in the pub, he says, advised me. Eamon Andrews said, we've done better than that. We've got the fella who left the toilet door open. And I was nearly late getting here, me, today. I come up from Birmingham for the day and working down there. And coming up, just getting on the train, running on the platform for the train, Birmingham station, it's going out of the station. I ran like mad and I couldn't catch it. I came back and the ticket collector's there, all smiles, laughing he was. He loved it, you know. He said, did you miss your train then? I said, no, just chasing it out of the station. I had a laugh in town, a fella flat on his back in the gutter. Flat on his back in the gutter, one of the back streets near here, he's lying there in the gutter. The policeman came up, he said, you're drunk. He says, I'm not drunk, officer. He says, you're drunk. I'm not on this stop. He said, if you're not drunk, what are you doing flat on your back in the gutter? He says, I found a parking place, I've sent the wife home for the car. There's no fun in motoring now, is there? I was in the car the other day, wrong way up a one-way street. Copper came up, he said, hey, do you know this is a one-way street? Where you going? I said, I don't know, but it can't be much good. Everyone's coming back. It's the only way with the police. Have you noticed? You've got to answer them back. Show them who's boss. Policeman stopped me going over some traffic lights on red. He said, didn't you see those lights on red? I said, yes. He said, why didn't you stop? I said, well, when you've seen one, you've seen them all. As soon as I said that, he went. And I went with him. He had me down at the police station. I knew it was the police station because none of the bikes parked outside had rear lights on. And there was a policeman there making a report. He'd found a dead horse in Nebuchadnezzar Street, wherever that is. And he's writing it down. He's putting found, one horse, dead, not living. Nebuchadnezzar, N-E-B-B-U-K-C-U-N. Sergeant, how do you spell Nebuchadnezzar? Sergeant said, you should know, it's your job, find out for yourself. In other words, he didn't know either. Policeman went out, he came back 5 minutes later, covered with muck and dust, all the buttons off his tunic. Sergeant says, where have you been? He said, I've been moving that horse into King Street. That's daft, isn't it? Get all these daft jokes going. I like the one about the vicar who ran out of petrol on a country lane and he's got nothing to carry the petrol in, so he's except the little kiddie's potty on the back seat of the car. He's been taking his kids out to the seaside. So he gets the kiddie's potty, walks up the road to the garage, fills it with petrol, comes back, he's just tipping it in the petrol tank of the car. Fella come round the corner, he says, you've got more faith than I have, vicar.
Colin Crompton spends his time in Morecambe. You know, in Morecambe. He went for a job in Morecambe. And the fellow said, the only thing is litter collecting. He said, I'll take it. He said, have you had any experience? He said, no, I'll pick it up as I go along.
The fellow near us won a bit of money on the pools, and he decided to go on a tour on one of these world cruises, and he's on his own, only ordinary working lad, but he's living it up first class, dead posh on the boat. And he sat down at breakfast the first day, and a French fella comes and sits at the same table, and he says, Bon Appetit. And the little Lancashire lad stands up and he says, Charlie Higginson. As his breakfast the following morning, there again, the French fella, Bon Appetit. Charlie Higginson. It's been on about 4 mornings, this, and the Lancashire lad's having a drink in the bar at dinner time, and he meets another English fella. He says, funny fella sat opposite to me at my table, his name's Bon Appetit. He says, you are? He says, you daft duck. Not Bon Appetit. He says, that's French, it means good appetite. I hope you enjoy your meal. He says, oh, blimey, I'll get it right tomorrow. Following morning, the Frenchman comes down, the little Lancashire lad stands up, he says, Bon Appetit, and the French fella says, Charlie Higginson. I found a nice drive out from Morecambe, a little country pub in the village, miles from anywhere, up in the Lake District. Tommy was with me, my mate, the boozer. He said to the landlord, have you got a big black dog in this village with a white collar? Landlord said, no, we haven't. He said, well, have you got a big black cat with a white collar? Landlord said, no, we haven't. Tommy looked at me, he says, there. It was the vicar I ran over. He's a fool. He's getting absent-minded, though. He has to buy a loaf of bread to find out what day it is. And he's drinking heavy, as usual. He went on one of the continental coach trips for his holidays, and he was the only one on the bus that could see nothing wrong with the Tower of Pisa. He supped so much on the boat coming back, they had to pay duty on him to get him back in the country. He came out of the pub drunk the other night. There were 2 nuns walking towards him, and one went either side of him. He says, how the hell did she do that? There's so many empty bottles in their back garden, it's put 200 quid on the value of the house. The whole family's potty. He's got a sister, Ethel she's called, and she used to live in a terraced house, and the corporation were pulling it down, so they rehoused them in one of these big blocks of flats they're slinging up miles high, and they were on about the 40th floor. They moved in the first day, they sent the kids out on the balcony to look down at the aeroplanes. He said to his wife, he said, Ethel, he said, it's our first real home, this. Hope you're going to look after it and keep it nice like it is now. She says, I will, I'm house proud. She went out Tuesday, didn't come back while Friday. He said, where have you been? She said, I've been doing the steps. A referee at a football match, and it's getting a bit rough, and they're throwing bottles on the pitch. And one of the players said to him, don't worry, ref, you remember what it said during the war? If your name's on it, you'll get it. The ref said, that's what I'm worried about. My name's Worthington. I like the story about the 2 fellas on the motorbike, one giving his mate a lift to work on the back of his motorbike, and his mate's got a cap on. He said, if I go on the back of your motorbike, the cap will blow off. He said, well, put it on back to front. All right, won't blow off then. They're driving along to work, he's gone about 5 miles, he looks behind him, his mate's gone. Fell off. He turns round, goes back, and there's all round him, and the crowd in the road, and there's his mate lying on the floor. He said, is he all right? And the coppers said, well, he was all right till 5 minutes ago, and we turned his head round the right way. He hasn't said a word since. Fellow won 150,000 quid on the pools, and he thought, I'll get myself a Rolls Royce. So he went to the shop and he said, hello, could I see Mr. Rolls or Mr. Royce, please? And they said, well, he isn't in. So they said, well, we want a Rolls Royce. I've won all this money on the pools. And the salesman said, have you ever driven a Rolls Royce before? He said, no, I've never had the money. I've never driven anything before. He said, oh, well, you don't want to start with a Rolls Royce. Oh, no, you want to get the feel of the road first. He said, get yourself a little Mini. Then come back to us when you're more used to it. So we went round to the shop where they sell the Minis, and he said, could I have a mini car, please? He said, have you been on the road before? He said, no, I haven't. never driven before. I said, well, you don't want to start with a Mini. You don't want to do that at all. He said, you want to get yourself a scooter to start with. Learn on that, he said, because if anything goes wrong, you can put your foot on the floor and slur. You can't do that with a Mini till you've had it a couple of months. Get yourself a scooter. So we went to the scooter shop and they wouldn't sell him one. They said, have you been on the road before? He said, no. They said, well, you don't want to start with a mechanical thing like that. Get yourself a push bike to start with. So we went round to the push bike shop and he said, could I have a push bike, please? £150,000 on the pools. So he said, have you been on the road before? So he said, no. I said, well, you don't want to start with them. They're mechanical, those. He says, you want to get yourself hoop and stick to start with. He said, be able to weave in and out the traffic and get the feel of it and the highway code and everything, you see. So he went to Woolworths and he bought hoop and stick. It was £3 and £9 it cost him. So he got home and the following day it was lovely weather, so he thought, I'll have a run to Southport. So he gets daft at it. So he put his crash helmet on and his goggles and stuck an L plate on it. And he went bowling off, you see, towards Southport. And halfway up the East Lancs Road, he's getting a bit tired, so he sees a transport cafe. So he pulls in at the transport cafe, you see, and he parks his hoop and stick on the car park. Tied the stick to the hoop so nobody'd pinch it, you know. Wasn't a fool. And when he came back, it had gone. Somebody had pinched it, so he called the manager. He said, hey, hoop and stick, it's gone. The manager said, well, I don't want any trouble. How much was it? He said, it was £3 and £9. He said, well, I'll give you the £3 and £9. He says, well, how am I going to get home? My mate Tommy, he's been married 22 years. He's got 22 kids. His wife's never heard of Horlicks. Right, 22 of them. They don't have a babysitter, they have a shepherd. So many nappies hanging up to dry in the kitchen, it causes a rainbow. He takes them all to the park on Sundays and the ducks feed them. Sling little worms up. He's got one little girl, Debbie she's called, and she's 4, and she thinks the world of her dad. Because kids do when they're 4, don't they? They don't know them. He bought her a little puppy dog for a birthday present and he house-trained it himself. Every day for about 3 months he was at it. On the paper! On the paper! Eventually he trained it and he had to start all over again. Not while I'm reading it! She's lovely, is Debbie. She goes to Sunday school and the teacher said to the class, can any little boy or girl tell me where Jesus lives? And little Debbie, 4. She says, please, teacher, Jesus lives in our bathroom. Teacher said, how do you make that out? She said, well, every morning my dad hammers on the door and says, Jesus, are you still in there? They're lovely old people, aren't they? I passed the bingo hall this afternoon and there was an old lady in the queue at the bingo hall and a funeral went past and she started crying her eyes out. Her friend said, do funerals always affect you like that, Lily? She said, no, not usually, but he's been a good husband to me. The offices are one of these big holiday camp concerns in London, you see. The offices are there. And there's an old lady and an old gentleman looking at the photographs of all the holiday camps in the window with envy. They're looking, they want to go, you see. And the boss of the holiday camp, he sees them and he feels sorry for them and he gives them a 3 weeks holiday, which they gladly accept. And he went to see how they were going on. He knocked on the chalet door and the old lady came. He said, do you like it? She said, oh, yes, thank you, it's lovely. He said, have you played bingo? She said, yes. I've won a plastic washing up set and a brush with a bent handle. I'll find a use for it. He says, have you any complaints? She says, no, but I'd like to ask you a question. He said, what's that? She says, who's the old gentleman I'm sharing the chalet with? There's this fella on a desert island. On a desert island with 6 beautiful girls, and they had a meeting between themselves. They said, we'll get fed up if he's with 6 of us all the time. So every day, 5 of us will go over to the other side of the island, and he can keep one of us company all day. And they made a rota system out, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And on Sunday, they let him have a day off, you see. And they all went over the other side of the island, and he read the papers. And the rest, you see. And after... it gets after this. And after about 3 months, he was getting a bit tired and fed up and everything, and he saw a raft with another fella on coming up to the island, and he thought, oh, great, a few more days off here, this is going to be marvellous. Another fella, and this other fella arrived, and they pulled him off the beach, and this other fella got off his raft, and he said, thank you very much, ducky. No? Fella who'd been there for 3 months looked round, he says, bang goes me Sundays. I like the one about the fella in his a butler in a house, you see, and a very wealthy lady owns this house. And she says one day, James, because that was his name, the butler, she said, James, come into my bedroom. So he went in, and she said, James, take my dress off. So he took her dress off, and she said, James, don't ever wear my clothes again. A fella dashed into a barber's shop, and there were 6 people waiting, and he said, I'll come back later, and he dashed out again. The following day he was in again, and there were a few people waiting, so he said, I'll come back later, and he went out again. 12 months later, his hair's down here. But he still comes in, and he said, I'll come back later. And the barber said, quick to his assistant, he said, leave what you're doing, follow him and find out where he goes. So the assistant came back 20 minutes later. The barber said, where did he go? He says, round to your house. There were 2 kids at school. They started school when they were 5, and they hated each other from the word go, and they went through all the schools together, hating each other, through public school, university, the lot, and they still hated each other. And when they left, one of them went into the church and became a bishop, and the other one went in the Navy and became an Admiral. And they never met for about 40 years, and they were both on Euston Station in London, and the niggle was still there. They still thought about it. And the bishop went up to the Admiral, said, excuse me, porter. What time's the next train for Manchester? And the Admiral looked at the bishop and he said, 6 o'clock, madam. I like that in the paper last week. Did you see where it said that if the present rate of population increase carries on, the world population will have doubled by the year 2000, and it'll be hopelessly overcrowded everywhere and a food shortage. And it said that in this country alone, there were 872,000 babies born every year. Well, I worked this out on a bit of paper. And honest, you try it after. It works out there's a woman giving birth to a baby every 36 seconds. Now we've got to find this woman and stop her. You can prove anything with figures, can't you? They're at it all the time. I'm not bringing politics into it, because every government does it on us. They did it on us with the breathalyser, when you think of it. It must be good because it saved lives, but they did it wrong. They could have saved more lives, because they reckoned that before it came out, 10% of all the accidents on the roads were caused by drunken drivers. Well, if that's true, it must mean that 90% of all the accidents were caused by sober drivers. So why didn't they ban them? Let us lot get home in safety. The ways there are of making money, if you can only think of them first. There's a little Jewish fella got a corner shop near us. He makes a lot of money, and he deserves to, because it's one of those shops. I bet you've got one near you. It's open on half-day closing, and it's open till 10 o'clock at night, and it's open on Sundays. And he sells everything. And a big supermarket opened across the road in opposition, and they wrote on the window, in that whitewash stuff, that you can rub out an altar when you're on your way home drunk. You've done it. You can work wonders with cooking fat. And they wrote on the window, best butter, 35 pence a pound, you see. So the Jewish lad wrote on his window, best butter, 25 pence a pound. So the supermarket changed theirs to 24 pence. So he changed this to 14 pence. And this went on till best butter was twopence a pound, you see. The manager from the supermarket came over. He said, "Are you Mr. Cohen who owns this shop?" He says, "Yes, I am Mr. Cohen." He said, "Well, can't we come to some arrangement about this butter? Twopence a pound. It's costing us 30 pence to buy it." Cohen says, "I don't care. I don't sell butter." It's time to think of holidays now, though, isn't it? Getting on holidays. I went to Spain last year, a place called Costa Packet. It's dear, isn't it? A pal of mine went to one of them holiday camps. They had a grand time. You've been there, haven't you? Holiday camps. All these fellas in blazers dashing about all day to make sure that you enjoy yourself, and same fellas dashing about all night to make sure that you don't enjoy yourself. They have all the competitions, don't they? Beauty queens and knobbling knees. They had one for the fellas. Fella with the most handsome physique, the fella with the muscles. Prize for that one was that the winner was allowed to take out the winner of the beauty contest every night for a whole year, all expenses paid. Well, all these fellas are lined up 3.5 miles across the camp, you know, all showing off the body beautiful. Some smashing specimens, all except one little fella at the end of the line. I felt sorry for him. He was a thin, weedy, dissipated-looking bloke. He looked like a TV producer. He hadn't a chance. The judge told him, he said, "I don't like telling you, old man, but this prize, this girl every night for a year business, you've no chance." He says, "I know, but I'm last year's winner and I've got to defend my title."